Okay, so a little bit of a background on this. First, hi, my name is Sai. I am a. I don't even know if it's fucking appropriate to say I am a amateur political scientist. That feels way too fucking jazzed up. I'm an armchair political philosopher. Um, Honestly, a lot of what I have really just applies from a point of just taking like a common sense approach to shit. At least as it makes sense to me and my experiences in life. And the purpose of this video, which will in all likelihood be multiple fucking videos looking at the size of this goddamn document. The purpose of this is me sitting down and having a distinct awareness, as I'm sure many out there are, of Project 2025, which apparently is more accurately entitled The Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise. I've heard a lot of heinous shit about this in recent history. A general impression of ne'er-do-wells and bullshittery. And it occurred to me, I forget what it was, but some years back, a friend of mine, she went to law school. If she happens to watch this video, you know exactly who you are. She had, what was it? It was some kind of law that was passing. I forget if it was federally or locally, like statewide. But the documentation for it was, I don't want to say equally horrifying because I'm pretty sure it was like at a state level. But it was some horrifying and fucked up shit. And she had sat down and said, you know what? I'm going to go through and I'm going to read the entire proposed document. Let's see how bad this is. And it was actually pretty bad, if I recall correctly. But it was also really inspiring for me. Watching her go through... I mean, I didn't watch her actually go through it. It's not like I was camped out, the back end of her and her husband's living room, like, hey, how's it going? But seeing her give a breakdown and knowing that she had gone through this entire document full of legalese and all this shit that honestly I could translate, but I just really couldn't be bothered to fucking do because it's not my specialty. Knowing that she went through that and actually read it, again, it was really inspiring for me because, I don't know, it's all too often the case that I see, both on the left and the right here in the United States. A lot of us just kind of sit down and accept things in soundbite meme format. And frankly, I'm not even going to sit here and give blame on it. We live in a world full of fast-paced information where if it's not presented in a bite-sized format, then it's not worth it because, you're Pavlovian trained to go at a massive speed, or because you're just frankly too fucking tired from existing in all of this. Or any number of other reasons. At the end of the day, though, it is what it is, regardless of whether it's something to be critiqued and talked about, and maybe I'll fucking do something on that at some point. I don't know. This is really off the cuff. Regardless of your stance on to why, that is what it is. And like even I'm guilty of this, very much so. There's a lot lost in that. I tend to personally try and focus a lot on communication. Words have meaning. There is intent when you draft a document. Now, most people don't really have to worry about this. In a common layman's approach to everything, it is what it is. We just communicate. I mean, you'll note, like, right here, like, I'm speaking again. I'm off the cuff at the moment. But, like, I'm not going forward with a conscious intent as... actually, no, I think I am. Okay, no, that was a bad example. Disregard that. In most casual conversation, we don't necessarily have that kind of like nuanced, layered intent. The one we all commonly look at as that is, terms of service. Like, who the fuck reads the terms of service? But things like terms of service or laws that are out there, any number of official documentation, words have meaning. The construction of a document has meaning, it has purpose. And from that, I mean, that's what makes and shapes the fucking world. And all of it really, it boils back to, again, I was inspired. And it occurred to me, I see all these memes going on, calling attention and calling to action in relation to Project 2025, saying it has this, or it has this, or it has that, or maybe it has that thing over there. And all of which could be very true. But it also might not be. I don't personally know because I've not sat down and looked at the fucking document. As I'm sure is probably the case for most anyone that is happening to see this fucking video. So I thought, you know what? Maybe. What if I sat down and went through and read this entire document? How bad could it be? This was before I realized it's 922 pages fucking long. But I threw it out there, and I'm going to commit. My intent with this video is to sit down and go through this entire document. Now, this document was, I've heard, I think I heard like the day after this came out, that there was some fuckery going on with the document in and of itself, where formatting was being changed and what have you. I'd like to go ahead and throw out, according to the timestamp I have on the file here, this was downloaded on July 16th, 2024 at 10:30 in the AM. So that is the timestamp on this particular document that I'm going to be going through. I have not read this beyond making sure it opens. And making sure it actually is 922 fucking pages long. This is going to be, I guess you would call this a reaction video. This is a horribly depressing reaction video, and I can't believe I'm fucking doing this. But you know what? Hey, I'm going to be providing my personal commentary on it. I want to go ahead and make sure and throw out there as a preface. Please understand. As much as I said at the beginning, like, I'm a political scientist. I'm just some fucking dude, all right? I am not necessarily, I mean, I personally hold my own opinions in high regard and esteem, but don't necessarily take anything or any assumptions, conclusions that I draw. Do not take any of that as gospel or as, you know, the end-all be-all truth. Formulate your own opinions. Formulate your own thoughts. I'm not going to use the over-fucking-done phrase, do your own research. Except in this case, the research is read the fucking document yourself, or just watch this video and make your own thoughts. Maybe you think I'm an idiot. Maybe you think I'm onto something. At the end of the day, though, sit down, contemplate it yourself. Come to your own awareness. Don't take me as any kind of authority on shit. I'm no different from you or anybody else on the fucking street. I'm just reading this. I'm going to give my off-the-cuff interpretation of whatever I read, which I am open to changing that at a later time if perhaps I rethink something, or if I'm in a conversation with someone and they go, hey, did you think about this? No, I fucking didn't, because I'm a human fucking being and my brain is a wad of electrified bacon fat that, you know, misfires. Pushing past 40. Cut me some slack. I think that's a reasonable enough preface for this. I hope so anyway. Don't be a dick. That's really what it boils down to. Don't be a dick. And don't try and assume I'm doing anything other than literally reading a document, giving my thoughts, and sharing that. That's fucking it. All right, let's dive in. So, 2025, Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise. Forward by Kevin Roberts, PhD, and edited by Paul Dans and Stephen Groves. All right, first thing I actually want to check here. Let me pull this up. What do we got? Kevin Roberts. What do we got? Wikipedia? That's not Wikipedia. All right, what is he? Oh, no. That's Wikipedia. All right, Kevin Roberts. Born June 24th, 1974, as the president of the Heritage Foundation, a conservative political think tank, and its lobbying arm, Heritage Action. Prior to assuming his current role, he was the CEO of another conservative think tank, the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Roberts also served as the president of the Wyoming Catholic College from 2013 to 2016. Soon after joining the Heritage Foundation in December of 2021, the organization established Project 2025, an expansive plan to reshape the United States federal government and consolidate executive power should the Republican Party candidate win the 2024 electoral or presidential election. Okay, but what is he a PhD in? This is literally reading off of fucking Wikipedia. So, doctor? No, PhD? Here we go. He has a PhD in American history from the University of Texas at Austin in 2003. Let's see here, and a bachelor's degree in history, magna cum laude, from the History of Louisiana at Lafayette. That was in 96. And a Master of Arts in History from Virginia Tech in 1999. So, all right. He definitely is a PhD in history, so I would actually argue relevant for the context of what I assume this to be, of a political direction document. I would actually say history, a doctorate in history is extraordinarily relevant. Whether or not I agree with him, being completely off to the side, historical trends, following that sort of a thing, and recognizing patterns, what has worked, what has not worked, and so on. There's genuine relevancy to be had here. Now, whether or not there is better relevancy, leave that off to the side. Just commenting that seems appropriate. What else we got here? I'm going to leave you open. Paul Dans, Project 2025. Who are you? Paul Dans, Direct Heritage 2025 Presidential Transition Project, organizing policy and personnel recommendations and training for appointees. That is off the Heritage Foundation website. So there is that. And Stephen Groves. So what do we got? Okay, but who are you? Again, I'm going to go to the Heritage Foundation site, so we'll see how this says. Works to protect and preserve American sovereignty, self-governance, and independence as the Margaret Thatcher Fellow in Heritage's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom. God, that made me nauseous to read. Okay. I'm going to go away from that side because it's not really telling me much of crap other than, okay, he's some dude in a suit. Whatever. I've got a suit. Bite me. All right. Mandate for leadership. The Conservative Promise. Presidential Transition Project. There's copyright. Cool. Another page. Seriously? Come on. This is the same shit. A blank page. All right. Table of contents. Taking the reins of government, the common defense, general welfare, broken down by departments, okay. The economy. All right, let's keep going. Acknowledgements. This work, Mandate for Leadership 2025, The Conservative Promise, is a collective effort of hundreds of volunteers who have banded together in the spirit of advancing positive change for America. Our work is by no means the comprehensive compendium of conservative policies, nor is our group the exclusive cadre of conservative thinkers. The ideas expressed in this volume are not necessarily shared by all. No fucking shit. What unites us is the drive to make our country better. First and foremost, we thank the chapter authors and contributors who gave so freely of their time in the service of their country. We were particularly grateful. You know what? Actually, I want to stop for a moment. I'll reread that sentence. But you know what? I would like to say that I am a contributor because I'm, just trying to illustrate on this document and, create some kind of dialogue. So, thank you for thanking me. I appreciate that right out the gate. We were particularly grateful to have the help of dedicated members of the Heritage Foundation's management and policy teams. Executive Vice President Derek Morgan, Chief of Staff Wesley Coopersmith, Associate Director of Project 2025 Spencer Keratin. Cretan. No, please tell me it's Cretan. Can someone verify that? That would be so hilarious. And Thomas A. Rowe Institute for Economic Policy Studies. And the Thomas A. Rowe Institute for Economic Policy Studies director, Paul Ray, devoted a significant amount of their valuable time to reviewing and editing the lengthy manuscript and provided expert advice and insight. The job of I'm not going to go look them up, but feel free to go look those names up too. This has been on the screen long enough. Enjoy yourselves. The joy of transforming the work of dozens of authors and hundreds of contributors into a cohesive manuscript fell upon the Heritage's formidable team of editors led by Director of Research Editors Therese Pennefather, Senior Editor William T. Poole, Marla Hess, Jessica Lowther, Karina Rowlands, and Kathleen Scaturo, without whose tireless efforts you would not be reading these words. The talented work of Data Graphics Services Manager John Fleming, Manager of Web Development and Print Projects Jay Simon, Director of Marketing Elizabeth Fender, Senior Graphic Designer Grace DeSandro, and Senior Designer Melissa Bluey came together to bring this volume to life. We also thank the dedicated junior staff who provided immeasurable assistance, especially Jordan Embry, Sarah Calvis, and Jonathan Moy. Most important, we are grateful to the leadership, supporters, and donors of each of the Project 2025 Advisory Board member organizations and those of the Heritage Foundation, without whom Project 2025 would not be possible. Sincerely, I'm adding that, Paul Dans and Stephen Groves. All right, cool. Another blank page. Page of the Advisory Board. Might be worth looking at. I'm going to skip past it because I think it's just a lot of frickin' think tanks and probably political action committees of some sort. All right. The 2025 Presidential Transition Project. A note on Project 2025. We want you. The 2025 Presidential Transition Project is the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration to govern at 12 noon, January 20th, 2025. Welcome to the mission. By opening this book, you are now a part of it. No. I mean, okay, I guess ethically and philosophically, since I'm actually discussing this as a topic, that does, in a very real sense, make me a part of it, but I don't think in the way that you intended it as you wrote. But all right. Indeed, one set of eyes reading these passages will be those of the 47th President of the United States, and we hope every other reader will join in making the incoming administration a success. Again, I don't think that means exactly, depending on how this goes. Anyway, history teaches that a president's power to implement an agenda is at its apex during the administration's opening days. To execute requires a well-conceived, coordinated, unified plan and a trained and committed cadre of personnel to implement it. In recent election cycles, presidential candidates normally began transition planning in the late spring of the election year, or even after the party's nomination was secured. That is too late. The federal government's complexity and growth advance at a seemingly logarithmic rate every 4 years. For conservatives to have a fighting chance to take on the administrative state and reform our federal government, the work must start now. The entirety of this effort is to support the next conservative president, whoever he or she may be. Okay, all right. So, actual legitimate fucking criticism here. Going and, saying, what the fuck was it? To give a fighting chance to take on the administrative state and reform our federal government, that is patently incorrect. I'm not going to go pull up the exact numbers on this, but, we've had a divided fucking Congress for how fucking long now? It always comes out damn near in the middle. That's not to say there's a fighting chance. If you have your opposition at a standstill, you are already embracing a fighting chance. Fighting chance as a phrase means you are the underdog, and that is patently not the fucking case. That is loaded phrasing to try and have people get panicked. Fuck that. In the winter of 1980, the fledgling Heritage Foundation handed to President-elect Ronald Reagan the inaugural mandate for leadership. Really? Okay, that'll be a thing to look at fucking later. Did not know that about that. Oh, God, that's horrifying. This collective work by conservative thought leaders and former government hands, most of whom were not part of Heritage, set out policy descriptions agency by agency for the incoming president. The book literally put the conservative movement and Reagan on the same page, and the revolution that followed might never have been save for this band of committed and volunteer activists. With this volume, we have gone back to the future, and then some. I'm not going to sit and bitch about flowery text. I do the same thing. Whatever. That doesn't bother me. It's not 1980. In 2023, the game has changed. The long march of cultural Marxism through our institutions has come to pass. The federal government is a behemoth, weaponized against American citizens and conservative values, with freedom and liberty under siege as never before. Okay. The task at hand to reverse this tide and restore our republic to its original moorings is too great for any one conservative policy shop to spearhead. It requires the collective action of our movement. Collective action, you say? Really? All right. With the quickening approach of January 2025, we have 2 years and one chance to get it right. Project 2025 is more than 50, and growing, of the nation's leading conservative organizations joining forces to prepare and seize the day. The axiom goes, personnel is policy, and we need a new generation of Americans to answer the call and come to serve. This book is functionally an invitation for you, the reader, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Miss Smith, to come to Washington or support those who can. Our goal is to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one to deconstruct the administrative state. The project is built on 4 pillars. Pillar 1, this volume, puts in one place a consensus view of how major federal agencies must be governed and where disagreement exists, brackets out these differences for the next president to choose a path. Pillar 2 is a personnel database that allows candidates to build their own professional profiles and our coalition members to review and voice their recommendations. These recommendations will then be collated and shared with the president-elect's team, greatly streamlining the appointment process. Pillar 3 is the Presidential Administration Academy, an online educational system taught by experts from our coalition. For the newcomer, this will explain how the government functions and how to function in government. For the experienced, we will host in-person seminars with advanced training to set the bar for what is expected of senior leadership. In Pillar 4, the playbook, we are forming agency teams and drafting transition plans to move out upon the president's utterance of, "So help me God." As Americans living at the approach of our nation's 250th birthday, we have been given much. As conservatives, we are as much required to steward this precious heritage for the next generation. On behalf of our coalition partners, we thank you and invite you to come join with us at project2025.org. Paul Dans, Director, Project 2025. All right, even though that's basically the fucking forward, one thing that I think is pretty worth calling out here is how directly antagonistic and uncooperative this is. A common problem that I have seen that I feel this is genuinely a problem. I myself, if you couldn't tell by my tone at points, or if you just don't know me, I am very much on the liberal side of the spectrum. Let's say that. And that's whatever. I also know plenty of individuals that are themselves much more conservative leaning and not the frankly racist agendas and all the crap that run through the modern day GOP. There are plenty of individuals. I watch conservatives borderline in fucking tears at seeing what the GOP has become. I do not personally agree with traditional conservative policies. Not usually. But they are still a valid ethical construct in and of themselves. It's not like they are, I don't know what the hell to do with wording on it. They are not inherently invalid. Um, and there needs to be some degree of give and take. Like, I don't kid myself. I'm extremely liberal. And look, sometimes the shit I'll espouse is not necessarily the healthiest. I know that. I'm absolutely aware of that. I own who and what I am and what my particular political leanings are and my ideological views. But it's not necessarily the best thing. There is, at times, a valid need for conservative policies. I can acknowledge that. But a problem that I do often see happening these days is how much everything is split into camps. And both sides of the aisle are fucking guilty of this. Legitimately so. Wherein, it literally is one way or the other. And it completely discounts the fact there are so many different shades of gray in between, where these are not two weights that exist in opposition, where, they do exist in opposition. These are not two different modes of being, I guess. There's a gradient in between. That is a thing I feel that we genuinely have lost all too often, is looking at these gradients of conservatism to liberalism and where in between the best course of action is for any given circumstance. Because sometimes one route or the other is better. It's in the same sense of, sometimes it is genuinely the better option. No matter how horrible a person has been, it is genuinely the better option sometimes. Sit down, talk with them, find out what's going on, get where they're coming from. Maybe try and help them not be a piece of shit as a person. On the other end of the spectrum, punch a fucking Nazi. It all varies as far as what is and is not appropriate. It's a nuanced discussion, and nuanced discussion needs to happen. We need to have more dialogue and less tribalism. It's a serious problem. Again, don't get me wrong. I'll sit down and, slug it out with, well, not with anyone. I am way too jaded at this point. I'll slug it out in a political commentary. No problem with that. I enjoy these things as long as it's in good faith. But all too often, it's not in good faith, and it's people just trying to win. And, I get it. I enjoy winning, too. It's fantastic. But shit like this is genuinely a problem. In the opening we haven't even hit the actual pages of this. We're still in the ones that are titled in Roman numerals. In the opening portions of this, it is already laying an antagonistic foundation. It is laying out my way or the fucking highway. That's not democracy. That is not how a nation based on by the people and for the people should fucking operate. If you're going to sit down and go, oh, well, by and for the people that agree with my views, you're a fucking authoritarian. You're wanting to espouse a totalitarianistic state. You want to fuck up dissidents. That is what I take from that. Whether or not that is something that is viewed as such by the individuals drafting this, I'm not going to presume to know their mental state and what they are actively considering and thinking. But that's the end play. Whether they realize that or not. Much in the same way, if I were to... I haven't. But if I were to sit down and, say, drink an entire bottle of Maker's Mark, and then I go out driving, I may not be thinking I'm going to get into a car accident and ruin somebody's life and probably my own. But that's a logical endpoint for that shit. So, again, whether they are thinking it that in those terms or not, I'm willing to go even so far as they probably had the best of intentions. I'll even give you that one. But the logical endpoint of this kind of tribalistic bullshit is authoritarianism. Dissidents getting tossed into fucking camps or otherwise being, stamped out in some form or another. It's horse shit, and it's some of the most anti-American shit I've ever fucking encountered. Coming from, within America. It only gets worse when it's people actually saying the quiet part actively out loud. So, I think I've harped on enough there. Cold coffee. All right, let's continue. Here's my mouse. There we go. List of authors. All right, that's cool, but I'm not going to read that. Like, that's just stroking each other. Whatever, dude. I get it. I do the same thing. It's fine. I mean, maybe even rightfully stroking each other. I don't know these individuals. They may well have any one of these individuals. I'm sure they have plenty that they have done in life that I would not find repugnant and has been genuinely awesome. I'm just being commentary, like, bleh, whatever. Gonna keep moving. All right, what do we got here? Another blank page. List of contributors. Albrecht. I'm just gonna comment. That's a neat name. I have always thought that was a cool name. The construction of the letters in, that whole thing. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Christ, how much of this document is fucking padding? Oh, now we're at the forward. Okay. But this is from the PhD listed on the front. So remember, he was listed, most of his collegiate focus has been in history. So, 44 years ago, the United States and its conservative movement were in dire straits. Both had been betrayed by the Washington establishment and were uncertain whom to trust. Both were internally splintered and strategically adrift. Worse still, at that moment of acute vulnerability and division, we found ourselves besieged by existential adversaries, foreign and domestic. The late 1970s were by any measure a historic low point for America, and the political coalition dedicated to preserving its unique legacy of human flourishing and freedom. Loaded language. I don't know about by any measure, but again, flowery language, fine. Today, America and the conservative movement are enduring an era of division and danger akin to the late 1970s. Now, as then, our political class has been discredited by wholesale dishonesty and corruption. Not wrong? Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging family budgets, drug overdose deaths continue to escalate, and children suffer from the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Okay. While I'm imagining anyone watching this is probably in the same fucking vein I am of agreement, for the sake of completeness, throwing it out there. Alright, so inflation is ravaging family budgets. That's not a matter of ruling and cultural elite. That is a matter of how capitalism and taxes work, and the interplay of governance in relation to capitalism. This is a point that happens with, like, fucking free market economics. You sit down, if there's no restrictions on pricing, on how things go, you wind up with shit costing more and more because the companies have no reason to not continue raising pricing. This is an entire separate fucking discussion, and I'm not going to go into that here. But, like, you can't sit and blame... I mean, yeah, you can sit and actually blame that. I mean, we can loop that back to Ronald fucking Reagan, so I'm not sure really what your fucking take is here. Unless you're saying that the inflation is happening under the administration of these individuals. But I would assume, as a student of history, that you might note how things have, gotten to a point. How there's a cause, and then the effect happens. I'm not a student of history, and I am not deeply well versed on this. That is my understanding, is that Reagan fucked us all. Go in, research that yourself, take a look at that. Arguments on both sides of the fucking aisle. I'm not, because I don't care. I mean, I do care, but people way smarter than me with way more amounts of time to research this have come to that conclusion, and I'm just going to roll with that. Drug overdose deaths continue to escalate. Do they, though? I'm actually curious. Again. Ah! That was my drugs falling. It's a vape. That's it. It's nicotine. What do we got? Drug overdose deaths per year. Oh, here we go. Drug overdose death rates from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. All right. Okay, no, that is actually completely legitimate, at least as far back as 1999. Total deaths was around 20,000 back in 99 and 107,941 as of 2022. So, okay, no, accurate statement. Drug overdose deaths are continuing to escalate. Now, whether or not that is something relating to ruling and cultural elite, that's its own separate nuanced question. But it is a fair thing to call out. It is escalating. And children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Okay. No. Just no. I'm legitimately, I'm pretty positive. Again, I have my area where I look at shit, and even then I'm only armchair. It really just falls into political ideology. But I'm pretty fucking positive that's just wrong. Like, how is going with the phrase? So, okay, they're saying, break this down and try and frame it. Toxic normalization of transgenderism as a concept. Toxic normalization of it. Why is it fucking toxic? Legitimately, what is the argument of that? That is what needs to be looked at in regards to something like this. If you are going to make an assertion that it is in fact toxic, what is the reason why it is toxic? When we define something toxic in a chemical sense, that is determined based upon how those chemicals interact with the human body. We have data to verify what is the cause that brings about an effect, and then that falls somewhere on a spectrum of toxicity. That is how this is done. So if you are going to say that the normalization of... I apologize. I don't know what would be a better word in this context, like a more appropriate one, because I feel like it's fucked up to keep saying transgenderism, even though I'm like reading their text. What's a better word for that in this context? Legitimately, actual question. Please someone toss that in a comment. But if we're saying that the normalization of that is toxic, why is it toxic? You cannot, in any good faith, simply sit there and say, well, it is. Okay, for what reason? Like, this may seem apparent to you, and that's cool. And maybe this gets illustrated elsewhere in the document. But, like, you got to spell out what is the toxicity. I mean, I guess this is the foreword, so this is a place for flowery language, but... And also pornography invading the school libraries. Look, let's be fucking real. It wasn't school libraries where I was getting my fucking porn when I was 13. I had an internet connection. My dad had porno mags that he hid in his fucking closet. I could find porn. That wasn't hard. And it wasn't at the fucking library that I got it. It was in the home. The family unit. I want to retract that. I don't want to say the family unit in relation to... Moving on. Overseas, a totalitarian communist dictatorship in Beijing is engaged in a strategic, cultural, and economic Cold War against America's interests, values, and people, all while globalist elites in Washington awaken only slowly to that growing threat. I'll agree with totalitarian and dictatorship. Communist, that's a separate thing. I'm not actually entirely sure off the top of my head, now that I'm saying it out loud, how much of China's internal economic structure is itself communist. I know China operates using a capitalist... I'm pretty positive China operates using a capitalist economic system. This is a common misconception a lot of people use. Saying communist... Like, a lot of people misconceive communism as a government type. It is fucking not. Communism is an economic structure. Totalitarian government. Dictatorship government. Communist economics. And I don't think China is economically communist at this point in time. I'm pretty positive. But, I mean, hold on. Let me switch back over here. What is it? I mean, I guess the dude was born in the 70s. So, like, he grew up with some degree of saturation with McCarthy era BS, and honestly would still exist to this day, so fine. Globalist elites in Washington. No. Honestly, again, this is more a matter just not even so much that globalist elites wake in slowly. It's that pretty much anyone in political power is in the pockets of some kind of mercantile oligarch. And it's not in their personal interest to operate against that. So, apply again. You're looking at an effect as opposed to what is the cause. Like you're sitting down, someone got shot. Let's put a band-aid over the wound. You're a dumbass. But okay. Moreover, low-income communities are drowning in addiction and government dependence. Okay. Won't disagree with the drowning in addiction portion. But government dependence, I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the government, is to help out the people. And since the government is not the source of income, that is done, at least in the United States, that is people being harmed by economics, and the government is helping them? How's that a bad thing? Okay. Contemporary elites have even repurposed the worst ingredients of the 1970s radical chic to build a totalitarian cult known today as the Great Awakening. Does anyone actually use that? The Great Awakening. Manhattan Institute. Sorry, I've just never heard that. Apparently that is a phrase that's out there. All right. God, I am disconnected. Okay. And now, as then, the Republican Party seems to have little understanding about what to do. Most alarming of all, the very moral foundations of our society are in peril. Dinner aftertaste. Okay. Yet students of history will note that, notwithstanding all those challenges, the late 1970s proved to be a moment when the political right unified itself and the country, and led the United States to historical, political, economic, and global victories. Yeah, okay. Heritage Foundation is proud to have played a small but pivotal role in that story. It was in early 1979, amid stagflation, gas lines, and the Red Army's invasion of Afghanistan, the nadir of Jimmy Carter's days of malaise, that Heritage launched the Mandate for Leadership project. We brought together hundreds of conservative scholars and blah, 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 blah. This just seems like it's just stroking yourselves. Okay, what I'm drawing from this, because I'm not going to sit and read the rest of this guy's fucking forward. I'm getting tired of it. It's calling out the fact, so this entire Mandate for Leadership concept and what Project 2025 is nothing new. This has been in existence since the 1970s. So we're what, 30 and 50? 50? 30? Almost 50 years. 45? It's late, and I'm not doing the math accurately in my head, and fuck it. It's been around for a very hot minute. So, published 1981, the same month Ronald Reagan was sworn into his presidency. All right. Let's see. Here we go. This is an agenda prepared by and for conservatives who will be ready on day one of the next administration to save our country from the brink of disaster. See, no, again, this is the fucking problem. I don't like this shit. This is an issue. It is saying is being prepared for just people that agree with us from what they conceive of as a disaster. If we look at this ethically, I conceive of some conservative policies as a fucking disaster. Who's right? And on what criteria are we gauging right? This is the part that's lost. Anyway, Heritage Foundation is once again facilitating this work, but as our dozens of partners and hundreds of authors will attest, this book is the work of the entire conservative movement. As such, authors express consensus recommendations already forged, especially along 4 broad fronts that will decide America's future. Don't worry about it. 1. Restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Oh, the children. Dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. Secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. Are you not noticing the fucking hypocrisy here? The individual rights and self-governance, but you are wanting to dictate how that is done. Like, let's take for a moment, what if the self-governance that people wanted was administrative oversight for things? What if that was the case? You dismantling that is taking away their sense of autonomy. And the argument could be made, yes, you don't want that. But this is why we vote on things and why we should be trying to find compromise. I'm being really snarky here. I recognize that. I need to move past this. All right, keep going. Promise 1. God, do I actually have to read this? Next conservative president must get to work pursuing the true priority of politics, the well-being of the American family. In many ways, the entire point of centralizing political power is to subvert the family. Its purpose is to replace people's natural loves and loyalties with unnatural ones. You see this in popular left-wing aphorism, government is simply the name we give to things that we choose to do together. But in real life, most of the things people do together have nothing to do with government. These are mediating institutions that serve as the building blocks of any healthy society: marriage, family, work, church, school, volunteering. The name real people give to the things we do together is community, not government. However, the rules by which a community aligns in agreement and establishes standards and what is and is not appropriate for that community are themselves the foundation of government, right? And government is simply, by intent, to be an independent body to enforce those rules that the community has agreed upon. In that context, I'm pretty sure we can agree that is correct. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm open to the argument. But in that context, government is the name of the things we choose together. Because those things that we do together are what forms a community, and government is the rules of those communities. Okay. Our lives are full of interwoven, overlapping communities, and our individual and collective happiness depends upon them. Wait, are you actually arguing for anarchism? I could kind of see an argument for that from this. Of like, no, we don't need government. We should let the community self-govern. So you're arguing for anarchism. I think. I don't know if I'm being snarky or that's an actual fucking commentary. All right. Individual and collective happiness depends on them, but the most important community in each of our lives and life of the nation is the family. That's a broad statement. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of black children. Maybe, but I'm not sure how that defines as a crisis. There's no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. What if the father was a piece of shit? Like, legit. I have stories, anecdotal, but I know plenty of stories where the father was a complete and utter piece of human garbage. Was it bad to remove them from the situation? You're really painting this with rose-colored glasses there, Kevin. There's no government program. Oh, right. Fatherlessness is one of the principal sources of American poverty, crime, mental illness, teen suicide, substance abuse, rejection of the church, and high school dropouts. No? I'd be curious to see your citations. So many of the problems government programs are designed to solve, but can't, are ultimately problems created by the crisis of marriage and family. The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where most children grow up without their married parents. That would largely be because we have traditionally existed within a monogamous cultural, like a pretty homogenous monogamous cultural environment, wherein the traditional nuclear family concept and archetype was the norm. That's why we haven't seen otherwise. We have seen that fail numerous times, and for people to fall through the cracks. No. If current trends continue, we are headed toward a social implosion. What do you mean? What is a social implosion? Like, what does that look like? Why is that bad? Is it bad? That's a question. Furthermore, the next conservative president must understand that using the government alone to respond to symptoms of the family crisis is a dead end. Using the government alone to respond to symptoms of the family crisis is a dead end. Federal power must instead be wielded to reverse the crisis and rescue America's kids from familial breakdown. The conservative promise includes dozens of specific policies to accomplish this existential task. So, you're saying force people to abide by your rules? I really hope you clarify on this point later. Some are obvious and long-standing goals, like eliminating marriage penalties in federal welfare programs and the tax code, and installing work requirements for food stamps. We must go further. It's time for policymakers to elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion as their top priority, and even use government power, including through the tax code, to restore the American family. What I read that as, especially the line of through the tax code, is hold a gun to people's head so that they wind up doing what they want them to do. Literally. Well, it's a gun made of greenbacks. When currency is a requirement for survival, then, which is largely how the United States is made up, how most countries these days are made up. When currency is a necessity for survival, weaponizing currency towards a goal is frankly domestic terrorism. Like, point fucking blank. That is what it is. And especially for sitting down and saying to restore the American family to what? Because family can look like any number of different things. Presumably it is towards a specific view of family, which is then to say to the exclusion of all other familial dynamics and hierarchies. If a family is operating just fine with, say, one mother and 5 father figures, is that not a valid family? What about 5 mother figures and 1 father figure? What if nobody has any sort of gender identity at all? Oh, wait, no, never mind. Transgenderism. So let's just keep it within the binary. What are you defining family as? Like, I mean, actually, no. Did you say it before? Married parents? So it has to include marriage. But why? No. And I mean, all of this, again, I'm sitting down. I know I'm snarking. I know a lot of this is going without assumptions. Or, sorry, going, like, the hell am I working for? Um, there are plenty of baseline assumptions that we have. This, again, this is more for the commentary portion, why I'm vocalizing this fucking stupid shit. That and snark. Um, but this is not, no. This is reading as like, no, we just want to wind up turning this into our particular ethical view, and fuck your view if you disagree. So, some are oblivious to, some are obvious and long-standing goals like eliminating marriage penalties. No, I already read that. Today, the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of church and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent. Why make them tax-exempt? Or sorry, why have them be tax exempt? That's a legitimate fucking question. I mean, if they're going to wind up engaging in government, like this is an argument I've seen often. If an entity is going to be engaging in government and they're addressing a policy, then they should be taxed. They should be interacting with that in that regard. Why not tax them? That's a genuine question. We're not a fucking theocracy. We are not being run by Christianity, at least not openly. Why not? That doesn't hold any fucking water to my mind. The next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. All right, just fuck off with that shit. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equality, and inclusion, gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. Okay. That's nauseating as shit. What is the problem with equality and equity if we're looking at being Americans in the traditional commentary of what is America? What is, in fact, the problem with establishing gender equality? Because that is the foundational fucking baseline. Even if we go for a moment that your ethical standpoint is one that does not accept the concept of multiple different sexual orientations, which I'm pretty sure the RNC crashing fucking grinder may call into question. But no. Reproductive health. Well, what do you mean by reproductive health? Reproductive rights is pretty straightforward. I don't even know. It honestly, reading shit like this feels like I'm trying to communicate with. It feels what I imagine communication with eldritch beings in the Cthulhu mythos feels like. There's not even a common ground for this. It is evolved into some sort of alien monstrosity that, like, literally, I don't exist in the fucking reality of this. It is really hard for me to try and bridge this gap. Because there's not actually even any attempt to try and find a common ground where there can be commonality. Pornography, manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for instance, is not a political Gordian knot inextricably binding up disparate claims about free speech, property rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. I don't know if I would call it omnipresent. I went on X Hamster recently, and the omnipresent quality was titties. And there were no children. A lot of titties. But two. The occasional penis. And most of it, pretty straight or solo play. So I don't know what you're fucking doing. I mean, if the porn that you're looking up, Kevin, is oversaturated with transgender ideology and sexualization of children, Do you understand how algorithms work? Because there are some questions that can be asked if that's what you're seeing. Just saying. That's kind of a self-own and disgusting. Um, it has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classified as registered sex offenders. And telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. Okay, that's pretty widespread, pretty broad strokes there. Fuck you. I mean, look, I get what you're saying as far as it goes. Like, if there are individuals that are legitimately trying to purvey sexual material to children, fuck them. There are absolutely areas wherein sexually related activities and actions are completely reprehensible. That is a totally fair thing, and I am down for that discussion. It should be pretty straightforward for the most part. And then again, I'm reading through this, and I question what's straightforward or not in your eyes. But, like, let's say, for example, actually, no, not even for example, I have had several friends that themselves had set up OnlyFans. And they were selling pictures of themselves. Why? Because people enjoy looking at, human body. People like boobs. I like boobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if it is a commerce interaction between consenting adults, what is the problem? Unless, of course, you're basing it as a problem on your conception of a traditional marriage. In which case, I mean, that actually is exactly what's going on here. Did I mention this is off the cuff? It's also late, and it's been it has been a busy time of things for me lately. I'm really just trying to get this crammed out so that I can actually say, yes, I did some fucking recording. I'm probably not going to be able to get another one of these out for at least a couple of days. I'm going to see Deadpool tomorrow. Yeah! Alright. And in our schools, the question of parental authority over their children's education is a simple one. Schools serve parents, not the other way around. Incorrect. Completely. And I will tell you why. Like, this actually angers the shit out of me. In any profession where a person has training and knowledge, that person is a specialist. That person is who you should be listening to. If I am making a burger for Wendy's, you will listen to me when I tell you how Wendy's prepares their fucking burgers. Because I am the Wendy's burger flipper, you are not. If I am a mechanic and I am working on your car, it does not matter how much you want to say otherwise. I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but just for the sake of argument, I know what I'm talking about in this case. And the appropriate response is, you fucking listen to me because that is my specialty. Same thing applies to IT, to doctors, to any trained profession. Now, you always have the option to walk away. That is totally fine. If you don't like what your mechanic says, fuck it. I want my car back. I'm getting the fuck out. If you don't like how the Wendy's burger is made, fuck it. There's plenty of other places to go to. Hell, you can make your own fucking burger. And there's the crux of it. When it comes to schools, the context, the situation with a school, and the purpose of a school is to educate. It is to provide a certain baseline education for all individuals. Now, we can quibble all fucking day on what is and is not an appropriate baseline to set. I grew up in Florida. We had some fucked up shit going on with that. And there's not entirely a unified thing as far as I'm aware across the nation. There are different standards. People get different qualities of education. Different things are taught. There is nothing to create a unified establishing standard, which I do think is a problem. But a school is a public institution defined in commons and by common vote and by common representatives and their laying out of criteria for these purposes. Power is invested into the individuals that set school policy, I presume. I'm guessing this is how this fucking goes. If I'm wrong, fine. These individuals were vested with power, and presumably vested with this power because they have a degree of specialization in that field. And we trust them to utilize that specialization appropriately for the common good of everyone. To sit and say schools serve parents is fucking bullshit. Parents send their kids to school because they trust the school to do it properly. If they do not trust the school, then they do not have to be sending their children to that school. If you wish to maintain that control, you have a very simple option. It's called homeschool. You keep them at home. Then the school serves you because you are the fucking school. But if you are sending children to a public institution that is established for the common good, then no, fuck you. You listen to what the school says, and if you don't like it, you can fucking walk. Just like you walk from your mechanic, just like you can hang up on fucking IT, just like you can tell your doctor to go shove it up his ass and then go shove 15 fucking crystals up your own. That is your choice. You can just leave. Don't engage with it. Good deal, dude. Have fun with that. Teachers get enough horseshit that they have to fucking deal with already on all fronts. That this legitimately is actually something that infuriates the piss out of me. Teachers have to deal with enough already without having to listen to some self-entitled piece of shit, neck-bearded fuck and their Karen haircut fucking partner screaming about how their snot-nosed little goblin is so special and somehow is so fucking above everybody else's needs. Without taking the simple track of, just take them the fuck home then. But if you're going to be participating in this, okay. Anyway. That is, of course, the best argument for universal school choice, a goal of all conservatives and conservative presidents must pursue. But even before we achieve that long-term goal, parents' rights of their children's primary educators should be non-negotiable in American schools. You are absolutely correct. They are their primary educators, unless they wish to abdicate that responsibility to the public school system, in which case, shut the fuck up. States, cities, and counties, school boards, union bosses, principals, and teachers who disagree should be immediately cut off from federal funds. No. Fuck you. No notes. The noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curricula in every public school in the country. I'm pretty sure critical race theory is not taught in a K through 12 level. Pretty positive that's a collegiate course. Pretty sure that's also the case with gender ideology. So, when's the last time you went to fucking school, Kevin? These theories poison our children, who are being taught on the one hand to affirm that the color of their skin fundamentally determines their identity and even their moral status, while on the other they are taught to deny the very creatureliness that inheres in being human and consists of accepting the givenness of our nature as men or women. Kevin, my dear sweet boy, you had a master's in history. Stay in your fucking lane. Allowing parents or physicians to reassign the sex of a minor is child abuse and must end. For public institutions to use taxpayer dollars to declare the superiority or inferiority of certain races, sexes, and religions is a violation of the Constitution and civil rights law and cannot be tolerated by any government anywhere in the country. Okay. There are plenty of individuals that have done way better job of describing how it is not child abuse. Let alone, I don't think there's actually... I'm pretty positive that first sentence is entirely fallacious and should be disregarded in total. And as far as it goes for declaring the superiority of certain or inferiority of blah, 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 including religions, cannot be tolerated by any government anywhere in the country. So we should excise all commentary about Christian right? And certain Christian values that you're espousing and basing your context on. If we should be treating any religion equally, which, hey, totally on board with, then that kind of undermines everything you've written previously. Or at the very least, it needs a significant rewrite. Ethically, actually, practically, literally, you just kind of undid your entire fucking argument here. Not that I expect you to fucking see it, Kevin. But the pro-family promises expressed in this book and central to the next conservative president's agenda must go much further than the traditional narrow definition of family issues. Every threat to family stability must be confronted. This resolve should color each of our policies. Consider our approach to big tech. The worst of these companies prey on children like drug dealers to get them addicted to their mobile apps. I'm actually not going to disagree with you on that one. I don't know if you're right. I don't really think that's an issue of tech. That's just an issue of capitalism. I mean, we've been doing the same shit with sugar for fucking decades. There's a reason I'm fucking diabetic. Many Silicon Valley executives famously don't let their own kids have smartphones. They nevertheless make billions of dollars addicting other people's children to theirs. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms are specifically designed to create the digital dependencies that fuel mental illness and anxiety, to fray children's bonds with their parents and siblings. Federal policy cannot allow this industrial-scale child abuse to continue. So you do advocate for market restrictions. Again, I'm not saying you're wrong on any particular point, actually. No. There's some truly heinous shit that goes on in marketing circles. I've stared into the abyss. I'm absolutely on the same fucking page as you for that one. There's some serious fucking problems. And I completely agree. We should have greater degrees of restrictions of some form for managing corporate overreach that is causing, ultimately, the degradation of the human species as a whole. I think that's a conversation we should actually have. I'm willing to bet we'll have some disagreements on the finer points of it, but I think that's a conversation that should happen. Glad to hear that you're in favor of regulation of business. Finally, conservatives should gratefully celebrate the greatest pro-family win in a generation, overturning Roe v. Wade, a decision that for 5 decades made a mockery of our Constitution and facilitated the deaths of tens of millions of unborn children. So speaking as an individual who has, I'm not going to call out exactly what the circumstances for this were. Suffice to say, I've been belly up to this particular context of Roe v. Wade. And, yeah, you can fuck right the hell off. I'm entirely in support of women's rights to do with their body as they fucking choose. Trying to sit there and say it's the deaths of tens of millions of unborn children, you're a fucking idiot. Fuck off with your moralistic high ground bullshit. Eat a dick. But the Dobbs decision is just the beginning. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including the next conservative administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. In particular, the next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn that Congress will support while deploying existing federal powers to protect innocent life and vigorously complying with statutory bans on the federal funding of abortion. You know, if you really want to protect the unborn, are you going to give free health care to women that are pregnant? Are you inclined to do that? Because that would go a really long way towards ensuring they're good. Possibly provide some kind of a federal stipend for new parents so that they have an easier time of actually ensuring that children are raised properly and with care and not with needs. A significant amount of stipend. I mean, we're for the greatest country in the world, and we want to protect the unborn. Well, I guess it's focusing on the unborn. Do you care about the born? I'm gonna leave that alone. At least, the very least, for the unborn. Free healthcare for women in their prenatal circumstances. That'd be a good piece, or that'd be a good starter offering that would make it sound like you actually give a fuck. Curious if that comes up. Conservatives should ardently pursue these pro-life and pro-family choice policies while recognizing the many women who find themselves in immensely difficult and often tragic situations and the heroism of every choice to become a mother. Alternative options to abortion, especially adoption, should receive federal and state support. Okay, so you are in agreement that there should be federal funding. Also worth note, you're calling it heroism of the choice to become a mother, but there are people that wind up being non-consensually violated that then are not provided a choice in becoming a mother, but by your own policy statements, they don't have a choice in not being a mother once the choice to be a mother has been taken away from them. How is there any heroism? What are you defining heroism as in this? Because all I fucking see is a broodmare. Promise 2. Dismantle the administrative state and return self-government to the American people. Of course, the surest way to put the federal government back to work for the American people is to reduce its size and scope back to something resembling the original constitutional intent. Okay. Conservatives desire a smaller government, not for its own sake, but the sake of human flourishing. But the Washington establishment doesn't want a constitutionally limited government because it means they lose power and are more accountable by the people who put them in power. Like restoring popular sovereignty, the task of reattaching the federal government's constitutional and democratic tethers calls to mind Ronald Reagan's observation, there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. In the case of making the federal government smaller, more effective, and accountable, the simple answer is the Constitution itself. The surest proof of this is how strenuously and creatively generations of progressives and many Republican insiders have worked to cut themselves free from the strictures of the 1789 Constitution and subsequent amendments. I'm just going to comment. I really dislike the entire argument of original constitutional intent meant we needed to have things, smaller in scope. Yes, because in original constitutional intent, they absolutely knew about how things would develop over the next, 250 fucking years? I'm sure Ben Franklin knew about iPhones. Honestly, if Ben Franklin knew about fucking porn sites, we know what he would have been up to. Oh God, I think Ben Franklin totally would have been a fucking cam whore. I totally see Ben doing that. I'm not going to extrapolate on this further. Anyway, this argument doesn't stand on itself at all when you really consider it. It is a narrow-sighted view and perception at best that just does not fucking square with reality. When there are things that exist, there will be things that exist 100 years from now that I cannot conceive of at this time. I literally cannot. Similarly, 250 years ago, there are things that existed that literally could not have been conceived of by the founding fathers. How appropriate is it to say an originalist intent accounted for today's current circumstances? This is why we have things like amendments. This is why we have had branching things out. Now, I'm not saying government isn't over-bloated at all. It totally is, I'm sure. I'm sure if I were to sit down and do some kind of bureaucratic breakdown and deep dive into that, which I am not, but I'm positive I could find ways where things could be trimmed down or, cleaned up. I feel this is a bad faith argument. Consider the federal budget. Under current law, Congress is required to pass a budget and 12 issue-specific spending bills comporting with it every single year. Last time Congress did so was in 1996. Congress no longer meaningfully budgets, authorizes, or categorizes spending. Instead, party leaders negotiate one multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, several thousand pages long, and then vote on it before anyone literally has had a chance to read it. Debate time is restricted. Amendments are prohibited. And all this is backed up with a midnight deadline when the previous omnibus spending bill will run out and the federal government shuts down. Pretty sure a fair portion of that has been pushed by the GOP, though. I'm pretty positive. Again, I'm not going to double check it. It's 10:15. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I've been dealing with CrowdStrike issues all fucking day. For the last several days. Fuck off. Don't fuck off. I love you. You guys are wonderful. Assuming there's more than one person watching this. I adore you. You, specifically. Yes. You're fantastic. Much unlike Kevin here. Kevin's a piece of shit from what I can tell. But we're going to carry on. This process is not designed to empower 330 million American citizens and their elected representatives, but rather to empower the party elites secretly negotiating without any public scrutiny or oversight. Sure. In the end, congressional leaders' behavior and incentives here are no different than those of global elites insulating policy decisions over the climate, trade, public health, you name it, from the sovereignty of national electorates. Public scrutiny and democratic accountability make life harder for policymakers, so they skirt it. It is not dysfunction, it's corruption. Sure. And despite its gaudy price tag, federal budget is not even close to the worst example of this corruption. That distinction belongs to the administrative state, the dismantling of which must be a top priority for the next conservative president. The term administrative state refers to the policymaking work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal government's departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in Congress of the United States, which shall consist of the Senate and House of Representatives. That is, federal law is enacted only by elected legislators in both houses of Congress. This exclusive authority was part of the framers' doctrine of separated powers. They not only split federal government's legislative, executive, and judicial powers into different branches, they also gave each branch checks over the others. Congrats, you did basic civics. Under our Constitution, the legislative branch, Congress, is far and away the most powerful and, correspondingly, the most accountable to the people. I mean, yes and no. I would actually disagree with that. It is not far and away the most powerful. It depends entirely upon context. Congress and the judiciary are arguably equally powerful in different ways as relates to the American people. And the presidency is honestly is really just our fucking figurehead to the rest of the world, which does carry its own separate brand of power. So I don't know if I'd call it far and away. In recent decades, members of the House and Senate discovered that if they gave away that power to the Article 2 branch of government, they can also deny responsibility for its actions. Water. So today in Washington, most policy is no longer set by Congress at all, but by the administrative state. What? Wait. Where are we getting this from? Given the choice between being powerful but vulnerable or irrelevant but famous, most members of Congress have chosen the latter. I don't think this dude understands how a bureaucracy actually is supposed to function. Like, don't get me wrong, bureaucracy can easily be overinflated, and commonly is vastly overbloated beyond what it actually needs to fucking be. It's easy to fall into that fucking trap of delegation and overexpanding the bureaucracy beyond what it needs. But like, things can be complex, and complex topics require delegation to individuals that are progressively more specialized in areas. And then we take those authorities, or the word of those individuals who are specialists in particular areas, whose entire focus of knowledge is to analyze and study and provide commentary on a thing. We take their word because we delegate it to them because they know more. Like, I think my tiredness is starting to show. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to keep going. No. We delegate to specialists and to particular components so that appropriate focus and commentary can be fucking made. And then we have that escalated further up so that individuals in other areas can take that condensed data and turn that into usable policy. That is not rendering someone irrelevant. That is delegation of duties, you fucking nitwit. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's preening cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. I mean, Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the point that they're not accountable to the president? The president is not a fucking king. The president is in charge of the executive branch. Congressional branch is not at all accountable to the fucking president. The president can fucking pound sand. It's Congress's decision on how Congress administrates itself most effectively. So the argument of accountability to the president is fucking bull. Unless I'm misreading this. A combination of elected and unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency quietly strangles domestic energy production through difficult-to-understand rulemaking processes. Well, you see, Kevin, it's difficult to understand because you're not an environmental scientist. This is a thing you might understand if you had a different fucking major. It's difficult for me to understand what a mechanic is talking about when they're trying to explain the finer points of a fucking catalytic converter to me. It is difficult for me to understand that. Because the only thing I know about catalytic converters is that people that look like Kid Rock will tend to steal them to go ahead and sell meth. Or buy meth. I am getting tired. Catalytic converters, I don't know how they fucking work. And it would be difficult for me to understand it because I'm not a mechanic. Similarly, if I'm explaining an IT issue and the complexities of why, if I were to sit down and try and explain to you, Kevin, why CrowdStrike has actually been a serious fucking issue these last several days, I imagine it would be difficult for you to understand because you're not an IT professional. You're a congressional representative, or not even congressional representative, you're a fucking history major. I'm sure if you explain finer points of some area of history in which you specialize, it would be difficult for me to comprehend because it is not my fucking area of expertise. So saying difficult to understand rulemaking processes, that is literally how reality fucking works. These individuals are placed there because that's their area of specialty, and we should trust their fucking specialization. And if it slows down domestic energy production, then maybe we should be looking at our energy production and looking at ways around that. Because maybe they have a good fucking reason. It's like how my doctor tells me I should probably stop using my vape and should stop consuming nicotine because it will make things harder for me to continue on in life. You know what? They probably are right. Probably are. I trust them in that. I'm not listening to them because I exist in a capitalist dystopia, and this is one of the few fucking luxuries I can grant myself. But I trust they're right. They don't need to tell me why. And if they try, it probably is going to be difficult to understand because I'm not a fucking doctor. Bureaucrats of the Department of Homeland Security, following the lead of a feckless administration, ordered border and immigration enforcement agencies to help migrants criminally enter our country with impunity. Question that one. Bureaucrats at the Department of Education inject racist, anti-American, ahistorical propaganda into America's classrooms. Pretty positive you are completely fucking wrong on that. Department of Justice forced school districts to undermine girls' sports and parents' rights to satisfy transgender extremists. Again, you're a dipshit. Well, bureaucrats at the Pentagon forced troops to attend training seminars about white privilege. Because white privilege exists. And it's an insidious fucking force. Like, legitimately. It's incredibly insidious. I fall prey to this shit sometimes. Not half the time. But I still do fall prey to it more often than I would fucking like. Because that's how this fucking goes. So actually having a specialist in identifying these things and communicating these concepts is actually really handy. Especially when you give people fucking guns. I would like for my people with guns to be decent human fucking beings. I don't think that's that's an unfair thing to ask for, Kevin. Bureaucrats at the State Department infuse U.S. foreign aid programs with woke extremism about intersectionality and abortion. I'm moving on. Unaccountable federal spending is the secret lifeblood of the Great Awakening. Nearly every power center held by the left is funded or supported, one way or another, through the bureaucracy by Congress. Don't know on that one. Colleges and school districts are funded by tax dollars. Yes. The administrative state holds 100% of its power at the sufferance of Congress, and its insulation from presidential discipline is an unconstitutional fairy tale spun by the Washington establishment to protect its turf. Members of Congress shield themselves from constitutional accountability, often when the White House allows them to get away with it. Cultural institutions, make public libraries, and public health agencies are only as independent from public accountability as elected officials and voters permit. Let's be clear. The most egregious regulations promulgated by the current administration come from one place, the Oval Office. The president cannot hide behind the agencies, as his many executive orders make clear. His is the responsibility for the regulations that threaten the American communities, schools, and families. A conservative president must swiftly do away with these vast abuses of presidential power and remove the career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. Properly considered, restoring fiscal limits and constitutional accountability to the federal government is a continuation of restoring the national sovereignty to the American people. In foreign affairs, global strategy, federal budgeting, and policymaking, the same pattern emerges again and again. Ruling elites slash and tear restrictions and accountability placed on them. They centralize power up and away from the American people to supranational treaties and organizations, to left-wing experts, to sight unseen, all-or-nothing legislating, to the unelected career bureaucrats of the administrative state. As monolithic as the less institutional power appears to be, it originates with appropriations from Congress and is made complete by a feckless president. A conservative president must look to the legislative branch for decisive action. The administrative state is not going anywhere until Congress acts to retrieve its own power from bureaucrats and the White House. But in the meantime, there are many executive tools a courageous conservative president can use to handcuff the bureaucracy, push Congress to return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington and the American people, and bring the administrative state to heel, and in the process, defang and defund the woke culture warriors who have infiltrated every last institution in America. Okay. Conservative promise lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. Finally, the president can restore public confidence and accountability to our most important government function of all, national defense. The American people desire a military full of highly skilled servicemen and women who can protect the homeland and our interests overseas. The next conservative president must end the left's social experimentation with the military, restore warfighting as its sole mission, and set defeating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as its highest priority. The next conservative president must possess the courage to relentlessly put the interests of everyday American over the desires of the ruling elite. Their outrage cannot be prevented. It must simply be ignored. And it can be. The left derives its power from the institutions they control. But those institutions are only powerful to the extent the constitutional officers surrender their own legitimate authority to them. A president who refuses to do so and uses his or her office to reimpose constitutional authority over federal policymaking can begin to correct decades of corruption and remove thousands of bureaucrats from positions of public trust they have so long abused. Okay. It has at this point been a little over an hour and a half that I've been at this, and I haven't even gotten through the fucking forward. This is painful. I don't know why the hell I said I'd do this, but I will. At least until I wind up having some good reason to fucking stop. That last bit is one I kind of want to sit down and loop back to because it was the thing that I called on earlier in the course of this. This is an antagonistic document. 9 pages in. And what I find is deep antagonism and a unwillingness to even try and communicate. Now, in acknowledgement of, if I try and sit down and guess, well, and take it from the perspective of where are they coming from with this? Perhaps they feel they can't argue with monsters. I mean, I get it. It's the same sort of thing. Like, I'm not going to sit and have a good faith argument with a fucking Nazi. You're wrong. And based on what I've read thus far, it seems as though the reality from which these individuals, well, at least Kevin here, and presumably the rest that are in association with it, the reality that they are operating from is one that is fundamentally alien to core concepts and values that I personally hold to. And from values that I think are let me tone this one back for a second. if we are trying to look... No, actually, no, I'm not toning this back. Obviously, I hold my own values in a reasonably high esteem, as does most any person. I am willing to engage with conversation about my values in a good faith argument and from a good faith space. That does not mean I am willing to surrender on my values, but I'm willing to engage in conversation and, when appropriate, acknowledge an opposing value system may have a fucking point. And in situations like that, I will absolutely cede. That's fine. I am willing to work. But what I get off of this, I mean, very straightforward. Their outrage cannot be prevented. It must simply be ignored. That is a call to disregard. That is a call to not engage in constructive dialogue. That is a all or nothing mentality. That particular principle is reprehensible. That is not an acceptable thing. That is not an acceptable way to run a government. That is totalitarian. That is straight up authoritarian. That is point blank one of the most anti-fucking American things out there. It is really fucking high up there. And it's not like they're actually even fucking hiding it. I mean, they are, in that it's surrounded by a bunch of flowery, fear-mongering text. But honestly, you sit down and you actually think about this shit, at least thus far. I haven't even gotten to the actual document. It's very much a case of it's not a place of dialogue, which is honestly the biggest problem that I'm finding right now. I mean, there's other things that are genuinely bigger problems, but in terms of problems and statements that are even vaguely analogous to existing within reality, and like that I can look at and go, okay, I see where you're at. Things that I can actually address as like, that's a problem. That one's really seriously fucked up. Dialogue is something that we have very much been losing a lot of. And this is not helping that in the slightest. So. Promise 3. All right, I am not going to continue on this. I have work in the morning. So I'm going to go ahead and call it here for this. And we'll see about uploading this and see how this winds up going. If there's any interest in it, if there's genuinely overwhelming interest in me not continuing this, I'm totally fine with that. This is kind of an experiment on my part, seeing how it goes. But maybe I'll continue reading through it, even if it's like, oh no, I don't really want to see your face anymore or hear your fucking voice. That's also cool. I'm good with that. I'd like to continue doing this and continue reading through this and see how this goes. It's going to be a couple of days before I can because, you know, stuff's going on. Life. I need to try and do stuff to recharge. There's been a lot. I do want to go ahead and reiterate again from the beginning. I'm just some fucking dude. Like, I do not purport to have all the answers. Several points during this, I have sat down and called out, I don't know, this is not my field, etc., and so on. I'm not perfect. Not by any fucking metric. I am not an expert. I'm just a member of John Q. fucking Public. That's it. You are not under any requirement to agree with me. Maybe you don't like what I say. That's cool. I'm sure if you don't like what I say, I probably don't like what you say either. So, tit for tat, homie. You good. But you know, that's what makes America a beautiful place is plenty of fucking diversity, right? Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Diversity is bad. Fuck that. Um, but yeah, I'm just a dude. Okay. Um, any kind of commentary that's left in regards to this, please just try and keep it as some kind of civil dialogue. Um, don't need to sit and blast hate. Please don't do that. I have enough stress on my fucking plate without having to deal with that kind of horse shit. And I'll probably just delete it anyway. Um, but I'm open to thoughts of any particular note. If you feel that I'm out of place, or if there's anything that you'd like to add towards any particular commentary area that I've had for this, criticism on how I've been approaching it. Curious to hear any of that. Um, this is my first actual video that I'm doing while not just streaming a video game and being an idiot. So this is a little bit of an experimentation point. I think that's all I got. I think I just rambled for like 10 fucking minutes on doing a closing. There you go. There's the standard Midwestern shit. All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop recording. I hope you guys all have a wonderful time, wonderful evening. I love absolutely every single one of you. I'm going to enjoy Deadpool versus Wolverine. Not Deadpool versus Wolverine. Deadpool, oh, maybe versus? No. I'm going to enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine tomorrow. Hope it's fantastic. I hope whatever it is that you are doing at the time that you are watching this is equally fantastic. You're doing your best to live your life to its fullest. And remember, roll your shoulders on out. Does that look... Okay, that didn't look that bad. I'm cool with that. Roll your shoulders out. Relax a little bit. Take a breather. Go lay out in the sun. And do whatever you need to do. And, yeah, okay. And we'll call it there. Peace.